This works. Hello. Let's get this party started. Okay, I'm gonna wait for just a second for people to get on. Apparently, Comcast went down in the whole country for a second there. Well, we will check, make sure I have the right links and stuff, and then we'll get started in the chat. Let me know how you're doing, or if there's something specific you want to see for Oath stuff. I put together a little slide presentation, but if there's other stuff you want to see, we can do that too. This is my punishment for telling my kids, don't watch anything on Netflix while I'm doing the stream. Comcast is like, no one gets to watch anything. Okay, let's look. Is it starting? Let's go to the Twitch. Okay, sorry. I haven't done a lot of this before, so I'm going to just find the Twitch chat and we'll start. So, today we're going to be talking about Oath art and the world stuff for Oath. Cole mentioned in his designer diary slash Kickstarter update yesterday that we do things a little bit differently at Leader Games, where a lot of times, almost everybody I know who does illustration for board games, what they're illustrating is like a finished product. So the game will be fully designed, it'll have gone through play testing and feedback and a lot of polish, and then it goes to the illustrator so they know exactly what they're doing from the beginning. We do it a little bit differently, where I get to participate in projects right at the start. Cole had kind of a specific idea of what Oath wanted to be about, and some different ideas about what to do with the world, and I got to participate in how the world, what I wanted it to look like, or what I wanted it to feel like. I'm very grateful for that, because I feel like we end up getting a more cohesive product at the end. At least that's how I feel about Root, and hopefully people will feel the same way about Oath too. I gotta get the link for the Twitch so I can see the chat, and then we can ask questions or whatever. Let's see. Let's just go here. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I was so ready. I had lunch. I had a peanut butter and raspberry jam sandwich on gluten-free bread. Lunch of champions. And while I waited, I thought everything's ready to go, and I got the computer ready to stream, and no internet. Here we go. So I am just going to check the chat right there. Okay, I think we're all ready to go. Okay, so we're going to start into talking about Oath. Send Kyle some internet. Okay, so this is just one of the art pieces for the mountain landscape, and we'll hop in here. Okay, so the first thing to mention about Oath and the art for it is that it used to be called Saga while Cole was working on it. It's kind of its work in progress name. And we really didn't know what kind of game feeling we wanted it to be. Cole mentioned over, it would have been like at some food court Philly cheesesteaks at Gen Con about wanting to make a legacy style game where the game could remember what you did with it. And we hypothesized about magnets on boards or like pockets for things, so the game would remember how you played it, but we didn't want any component destruction, because we know that puts people off a lot of legacy games. So we wanted to achieve that same kind of feel, but weren't sure where to go with it. So for a little while, we played around with the idea of this kind of Norse fantasy setting. I have some Swedish ancestry, and I've really loved a lot of the art of Paul Bonner and some of his work on like Trudvang. And for a while, Trudvang was just like this weird role-playing game that I didn't think many people knew about in the States. It was a Swedish one, but then they had a good Kickstarter for their role-playing game. And I was like, I'm going to use that kind of as some inspiration. I was working on it, and then Simon, as you probably know, published a Trudvang game that Eric Lang that Eric Lang designed and his team designed. So it's not exactly obscure like I thought it was before, but this is kind of the direction we had gone with at first. The idea being like the elevator pitch was, if you win the game by utilizing a lot of dwarf power, then the next game would have more dwarves in it and like maybe less giants, or things like that. So the game would kind of change in how you played it. But this is kind of how we played with it so far. So yeah, we have dwarves and sylvan folk and trollkin and worms, which are like dragons, and then giants, and then spirits, and then some other kind of asterisk ones down at the bottom were beasts. We have the sassy deer that Patty at work loves, and then they have, we'll talk about them more too, a warg / exile. So that was going to be like the player character, which was just kind of like this anthropomorphic wolf guy. And there's a chunk of art for this. So, I mean, this is just the first page. And then there's a few more trolls and some more dwarves. And then there's some more dwarves. And then there's another dwarf. So that's kind of the direction it was going. But we decided to pivot a little bit. So this is Warg. And Warg was kind of like a concept thing that I was working on adjacent or like parallel to Saga or Oath, where Cole was working on this game that remembered what it is. And we kind of realized early on that we wanted it to be a fantasy setting because we could just achieve things that were historical feeling without having to base it on an actual people or mythology. And so I had been working on this kind of world for a while, and we thought maybe we can make them the same thing. Maybe we can implement them and make them the same thing. So this is Warg, and Warg was about basically these anthropomorphic wolf type guys who were kind of the sole wielders of magic in this world, and they, because of that, they were hired out to take care of monsters and fight bad things, but then they're also spurned by society. So if you're familiar with The Witcher, all that stuff will sound familiar to you. And the art was first kind of inspired by a few sources. There's some work by Emily Partridge, who draws a lot of canines, and some great things. Here's some other art inspiration. But we went down the Warg path for a little bit, where I was just doodling this sort of stuff. Let's see. Oh, I have a question on the chat about how do you think being an on-staff artist differs from being a contract artist for games? I think it depends on what you like. I like being part of a team where I feel like I can offer feedback early, and we can talk about what our goals are as a group. Sometimes being an on-contract artist means that you're drawing things that you don't care as much about, because in the end, illustration work is about making someone else's vision come to life. And I am much more in the camp of like the shared vision. I want us to both be working on something that we care about. So I'm extraordinarily fortunate and blessed to have the job that I do. I don't know of many other people who get to be on staff illustrator. Also, contract work and freelance work is a lot about hustling and finding your next job all the time. And I crave stability. And so this has been a good fit for me too. So let's see. So here's some wolves or wargs. Also, another thing about warg being a title is that it's just kind of, it's another like Norse thing, just kind of like being a wolf associated word in mythology. But also, I had never watched Game of Thrones. I'd read some of the books, but I didn't know that warg had taken on this completely different meaning for a huge portion of the populace. And I thought, oh, we can't do that. But now that everybody hates Game of Thrones again, we can maybe we can revisit this later. But here's some of the art for warg. Here's some more doodles for warg, and you can see how some of this kind of sketchy design informs oath, because one of the considerations we needed to make pretty early on is Cole would tell me like there's going to be a ton of art in this game, like a ton of cards, and I thought, okay, I can't do it root style where I'm drawing, you know, complete character drawings and backgrounds for every single card. I gotta have something faster. I gotta do direct ink to paper, no pencil sketches, to just get it done faster. And so that's informed a lot of the style decisions for this. Oh, I got another question. What did you consciously choose to do different between oath and root? I noticed that some of the outlines use more colors in root. Yeah, that's one of the big ones. Is that root? I was doing kind of this cheap version of now his name is escaping me. I know you know, if you follow game art at all, you'll know who I'm talking about. Oh my goodness. He did all the 4th edition book art and he did Pathfinder art. I don't know. It'll come back to me. Maybe during the stream, and if not, I'm going to look it up. But he does this cool thing where all the highlight regions are you know, really bright white and stand out. And so I was doing kind of like this cheap version or quick version of it where I would make the outlines white on foreground characters and root to set them apart from the background. And for oath, I'm diversifying that a little bit. So not just white. I'm using lots of yellows and orange and other things to make stuff set up from the background. Why am I good at drawing skeletons? I just draw all the time. I have my sketchbook with me all the time. I have it right here. This one is actually almost done. I have one piece of paper literally left in the sketchbook. Just being prolific, I guess. So here's some stuff for Warg. You can also see in the bottom left corner of this image that there is some of the what would become the fox guy, Meeple. I still think of him as a wolf, but enough people have called him a fox, then we're just going with that. Here's some other kind of sketchy ideas for like a color story for Oath. I knew early on that I wanted to do more yellow than I had with some of the other projects. There's some more skeletons for you. Do I still take freelancer contract work? Very rarely. Oh, Wayne Reynolds. Thank you. Yes, Wayne Reynolds is the artist I was thinking of. If you look at his work, he does really cool things with highlights, and I was doing the line art equivalent of that with Root, is what my attempt was. I'm doing that a little bit less with Oath, with just some different colors. Let's see. Where do I store all my sketchbooks? Do I throw some out? And if so, does it hurt? I think I've thrown some out, but mostly I keep them literally in the closet, like over here in my little office at my at my house. I draw pretty small, so my sketchbooks are pretty packed, and so it hasn't been a space problem yet. Let's see. Are there going to be more representations of character species in the cards? Warg, cloud person, form, whatever the chancellors, etc. No, because the whole idea, and I'll get to that, is that the people. Here's some more Warg art. The people in Oath are just humans. There's people, and then the idea of the characters you play in Oath is that you are an outsider. And because of that, you're uniquely positioned with some charisma to either be an exile just by default, because you're a little weird, like the yellow guy has 4 arms or whatever. But also you're in a unique position to lead everybody, and to be in charge. So I kind of like the idea, if you're familiar with like the Dark Sun setting in Dungeons and Dragons, of like there's sorcerer kings, or the regular people are just going about their lives, but the people who are in charge are kind of these weird, fantastic. And I like that idea of like if you're weird, then that means you're either in exile or you're in charge, and that's kind of where we wanted to go. So there's not really any other species of peoples in Oath. So like we kind of talked about on Board Game Geek in one of the forums the other day, where if you're playing as the blue guy with one eye, it doesn't mean all of your followers are also Cyclops. It means that they're all people, just humans, and you are leading them from a position of being an outsider. So here is, let's see. Most people get in trouble for doodling in meetings. Does Patrick get cranky if you doodle in meetings? No, he hasn't. Because no, he knows I'm mostly just working. Let's see. Let's see. Well, I'll go into Iterating about my perceived tonal differences between Oath and Root. Root seems much more optimistic and Oath more oppressive. Was that deliberate on your part? What has been your tonal focus for the Oath art? So Cole and I talked a little bit about early on when we were talking about using a fantasy setting that we both really love the Chronicles of Prydain books. So most people are familiar with the Black Cauldron, but also like it's the Book of Three and just that series. And one of the things I like about those books, and I think Cole echoes a little bit, is that they are a world where magic exists, but it's either like kind of commonplace or like really extreme, and when it does exist there's always like this trade-off. So it's like if you have, like, not to spoil the books, but like having a magic bauble that only lights up if you're thinking about other people, or having a magic lute, a magic harp that plays beautiful music always, but if you lie the strings snap, and it just like puts like these little like payments on the magic that you use. And so we wanted to put magic into Oath, but have it be like this kind of trade-off system, or have it be a little bit more understated, or be associated with kind of like old knowledge or old wisdom more than like casting fireball, if that makes sense. Let's see, more messages. Have you put any Easter eggs in the games you can look out for? I don't know. Yes, but are there other creatures in Oath like giants and beasts? Yes, there are. But they're outliers. So there won't necessarily be like a race of orcs or anything like that, but there will be like monsters that live in the forests and things like that. But most of the time they'll be more akin to animals than they will be to like a people, if that makes sense. So let's keep moving on this. Here's some more just notes for Warg. Here's some of the initial pieces that wound their way into Oath's end product. Here's some character design for Warg, and you might recognize the guy on the left who ended up being the Red Exile. So for a 4-player, here's what I had so far. And kind of a color story for where I was picturing Warg was going to go. What are you reading now? Leader Game staff seems to be pretty well read. I read. I don't read as much as Cole does, and it'll come up again in the stream. But we just had another baby. We had a baby last week, and so I have 5 children now, and that makes things a little bit busy. But this has nothing to do with Oath. But if you like books, this is a good book. How to Do Nothing. I recommend it to anybody. Doesn't have anything to do with Oath. Do you have an idea for the card sleeve art? Likely the card sleeve art will be pretty similar to what the card back art is, and I haven't done it yet. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's see. Let's keep going. Okay, so now we're getting into stuff that actually sticks around with Oath. So because we were still looking at fantasy as a touchstone for what we wanted to do with Oath, we realized as we were going something that we also wanted to avoid with Root, which was like not racially coding anything. And Cole and I would pass articles back and forth to each other and be like, oh, this is an interesting one about You know, the history of orcs being, you know, a stand-in for Asian stereotypes, and then this one is like how that changed to being an African American stereotype when Lord of the Rings um, came to America, and that's how, you know, things are portrayed in World of Warcraft, and it's, so we were very early on. We're like, we don't want it to just be like dwarves, orcs, elves, that sort of thing. And I mean, I think those things are what they are, but we needed a way to have suits in the game, like to have different categories of things. And so this was my initial pitch to Cole about what we could use for suits. And the way I was picturing it was like, if you took one thing from 7 different spectrums and then made it its own spectrum. So like if you took, you know, because I mean, and kids cartoon shows come to mind. So like if you have Avatar: The Last Airbender, and you have Captain Planet, those are both properties that have like fire and air, and but like there's little outliers. So like there's no like, I don't know, there's no heart in Avatar, but there's heart in Captain Planet. And so my idea was try and make like 7 different spectrums of things you could find in fantasy, and then take some of the most iconic ones from those, like sword and sorcery and you know, high fantasy type stuff, and then pick the ones that were the most interesting and sort of make it into one spectrum. So like I said, segments of different spectrums, cultural aspects instead of races, and then there would be deliberate overlap. So you have like beasts, which was kind of a holdover from Warg, which is you have, you know, animals, birds, monsters, things like that. Clockwork would eventually be scrubbed. It's now no longer an oath. It got assimilated into others, just because we needed 6 suits instead of 7. But then I got the sword, which became order. Hi, come here. This is Ivy. She wants to be in the movie, I guess. So this is, and then there's a sword, which is, you know, when you think of high fantasy, this is like Gondor type stuff. So you have weapons and armies and statues and things like that, and then demons and sorcery, and the wastes are kind of like the sword and sorcery type things. Think Conan or Barbarian, or Dark Sun, or Elric of Melniboné. And then the hearth is sort of like your like Hobbiton, or like your coming home type story, where you have farming, cooking, medicine, your kind of Settlers of Catan vibe type stuff. And the idea was you could take everyone's saying hi to Ivy. Hey, hi. Hi. Ivy is what does she most like? Which suit? She is on the nice end of beasts and the nice end of the hearth, and like the troubling end of demons when she has her own ideas. So I'm gonna take her up to her mom real quick, and then I'll be right back. Mom is pulling triple duty right now. Okay. I'm coming back. So I'll show you how this gets implemented. Let's see. Yes. You're getting the full Leader Games online meeting experience right now. Last meeting I had, they said, "How's the baby?" And I was holding the baby the entire time. But the idea of these suits was that if they were all on dials, and like you had the beast suit turned up to 3 and the sorcery suit turned up to 11, like that gives you a picture of what that fantasy world is like, where, you know, what they care about and what's prevalent in the motifs and stuff visually, without saying it's Lord of the Rings, or without saying it's Conan the Barbarian. And that way players could based on what cards they use, would change how the world looks without having to like ascribe to a very specific thing. So if you had like the wastes, which is eventually became the nomads in Oath, if you wanted like a Viking-esque scenario, you know, you turn the wastes up to 5, and you turn the sword up to 6, and then you turn clockwork all the way down, and you'd maybe just do a hint of demons or something, you know. So like you're building that world based on what things your culture depends about. Let's see. You said you wanted to avoid the general idea of races and racial groups. Out of curiosity, how did you approach and find inspiration creating the card faction artwork, which features humans, humanoids, and all sorts of things? I just wanted to make sure that like there could still be weird stuff in the world and a good variety of things that you could see without being like, here's the green guys and the green guys are bad. You know, like just leaving a little bit more open-ended than that. Because people are going to assume things about it no matter what you do. So my job is just to make it easy as possible to assume good things. So here is an example, just some early doodles about what I was talking about, those dials. So like you have beasts, clockwork, the sword, demons, the waste, sorcery, and the hearth, and how those things could fluctuate. So like if you have, you know, beasts on a 0 versus beasts at a 5 or a 4, you can see how the world would be different. So like the waste is like nothing, and then like a desert, and then like dunes, and then, you know, lightning hitting a mountain, and then a volcano. Like all those things typify the waste, but they're like on kind of an extreme to unextreme scale. And that eventually worked into what Oath uses now. So I think currently we have beasts, the sword turned into order, demons turned into discord, the waste is now nomad, sorcery is the arcane, and the hearth is still called hearth, I think. Although if you watch the Quackalope videos, they keep saying hearth. And, and their videos are so good, but that makes me laugh every time. Yeah, okay, so let's see. Sorry, checking the chat. Why are you always mean to the green guys? Yeah. Oh man, it'd be cool if somehow there were cards of a suit that only showed up if that suit was heavily, lightly represented in the deck. Yeah, that's kind of what we're going for, is that like we can't do that with this specific card, but you can do that with a group of cards. So like if you're playing with lots of Discord cards, that's going to make the deck feel very different than if you're playing with one or none. So before we got some of the systems changed, each suit was actually going to have a meeple. And so the meeple needed a symbol, like an icon, and that's what's on the bottom row. So you have hearth, order, clockwork, demons, nomads, arcane, and beasts, in that order. But then you also needed like a figure, and the figure had to represent, laying down it had to represent one thing, and standing up it had to represent another. So laying down was like, it just had to be a symbol, but standing up it had to be like a warband or a person. And so this is my attempt to make, and this stayed in the design for a long time. Cole can back me up there, but we almost made these. But these were screen printed meeples, or were going to be that we're going to represent those different cultural aspects. And then the icons live on, except for clockwork, and then the meeples went away. So that's this part of the deal. So that, I mean, that's another, when people say what are the differences between working on commission and working with the company, it means working with the company means more stuff gets thrown out. Probably just because we're in process, but that's okay, because it helps us work through some of the different problems, because ultimately all graphic design and illustration is just problem solving, and that's what I'm here to do. So going back to some of the art then. So this is just some doodles I was doing for what we were still calling Saga at the time. The idea behind these being that I knew that there were going to be a million cards, so I wasn't going to do pencil sketches. I was just going to do direct ink to paper. See, can you please explain the nomad design? The other ones seem more self-explanatory. It's just a face. It's a guy holding a stick. So it just had to be kind of neutral. So here are the some Saga just doodles Oath doodles. And this was still when we had, you know, dragons and things in it in a little bit more extreme way. But the idea was, because I knew I had to do lots of them, I was just going to do ink to paper outlines and then like watercolor washes for the color, and it would be on white backgrounds. We eventually decided, it was decided for me, that that this left the cards looking a little bit too prototype-ish, too not polished or not finished. And so that got scrubbed, but you can see just kind of up at the top where some of the art, like how I was drawing the trees and some of the environmental stuff, has stuck around into Oath's final design. But you can see here we have like a wrestler down in the bottom right, the halberders. They'll pop up a few more times. So love the giant holding a boat. Love the long neck cat. Yeah, the long neck cat specifically is one that Nick at work, Nick Brockman, was like, I don't like that. Let's see. Any insight on if the visions will mainly be text, or they'll have some really special art? They'll have special art on the back at the very least, just because they need to stand out in the deck. Probably the sides will be the same, so you can't see from the side of the deck how big they are or where they are, but they'll have unique art on the back. Wrestler is a bit silly, yes. Let's see. Are all the grays digital? You said watercolor, but maybe those round spots above the turnips look digital. Yeah, so when I say watercolor, I'm kind of cheating. So I'm using, I'm digitally coloring them, but I'm using a watercolor wash that I've made as an overlay layer to make it look more like real watercolor, and that's just a time-saving technique. So that's definitely digital, kind of those circles, but that's how I was doing it. So then this was kind of like some mock-ups for what the cards, and I was just sending stuff to Cole to show him kind of the aesthetic that I was going for. So you got animal playmates and balloon spies and living mountain and wrestling, halberdiers and magicians and traveling doctors and crop rotation. So these are all going to be a mix of just those different cultural aspects. So crop rotation would be like the hearth, and magician's script would be the arcane, and how those come into play and how often would affect how the world feels. So I thought it was pretty clever of Cole to come up with that, and for me to help out with that. And there are echoes of that and how the game still works, but it's not quite as literal. But I mean, that's how it goes with a lot of it. If you see any of Cole's design diaries, you can see there's a lot of thought that goes into these things, and then like some things get washed out, but it's the evidence of the care that goes into them is what is maintained. And that's one of my favorite parts of working for Leader Games, if I'm being honest, is that even if we make silly things or things that only we would make, that everybody cares about it a lot, that nobody's phoning it in, everybody's doing their very best work. So anyway, here's just some card concepts. So one of the solutions that I looked at after we said that those watercolor washes were looking unfinished is color coding them. It's using the same wash technique, but color coding using them the icon colors. Let's see. People talking about an art book, maybe one day. People ask about like a root art book, and it's like, well, we're not done with root, so we'd have to do more than one art book. So let's just wait until we're done, and then I'll do one. I don't know how it's going to go with this stuff, but so this is me looking at some of the card art that I had already done and using the colors from the icons that we're making to color code them. So here's the traveling doctor and the magician script again. Here's that mountain, and you can see how I've used the colors from the meeples and icons, and I'm coloring those. Still putting them on white backgrounds, and it was still looking unfinished. Let's see. Yeah, alchemist art used to be clockwork. Yep. Yes, the clockwork art will still be in the game. It's just been assimilated into other things. So here are. So this is the dark times. This is the Middle Ages of Oath's art development. So about this time, when I was working on these things, there were some other game companies that were publishing the art that they were doing. And I was looking at it, and I was just like, Oath is not good enough. It's not good enough yet. And I'm sure if you've worked in any kind of creative capacity, you get that sort of feeling like, oh no, I could do better than this. So I pivoted hard. I decided that I was going to redraw some of the things I've done in a radically different process, and then see where that took me. So I took like this is a card, the Specialist, that I had drawn, and I redrew it. So for these cards, I still did direct ink to paper, but this time I was doing pencil sketches first, and to try and get some of the sizing and proportions that I wanted. And I was doing brush pen first, and then a little bit of just like my fine point pens later. So yeah, here's, so for the one on, let's see, I'll do it this way. So for the Specialist that's all blue, I was doing this pen first, my fine point pen, and then I was doing brush pen afterward to do all the shadow regions, and I basically flipped it for doing the other way. And then I did that with a few pieces. All through Inktober, I did that with a few pieces. So here's Traveling Doctor, here's Wrestlers. I was just kind of exploring how I would do it differently. Here's a few other pieces. And it changed the tone of everything quite a bit. I did like that, like having the full color backgrounds made everything look more complete, but it started getting away from me a little bit. Here's some other ones. And by the time I got to this card, I was like, I don't like this anymore. This isn't good. And so I sent a message to Cole, and I was like, I don't really like doing it this way anymore. I think I'm going to change again. And everyone's so supportive. A leader, they're like, oh, it's okay, we can change this. And I'm sure they're like, oh, Kyle, get it together. So we took a good hard look at myself and the work I was doing. And I was like, this is just, again, I changed styles dramatically because I thought this isn't good enough. But now it just doesn't feel like me as much. So I went back to the drawing board. I went back to the Specialist card specifically, and I was like, I'm going to recolor it. I'm going to recolor it, and I'm going to give it a background. So I used a background that I had from Root, and I used a color palette that I'll show you how I made, and I recolored it, and I was like, okay, this is something. This is Oath now. This is feeling like its own thing. Like, even though I'm using a couple Root assets in the background, this feels like it's its own game now. It's a different thing. And it feels like it stands on its own, and I don't have to compare it to other board game publisher stuff as much. And I felt better about it. So to show you how much I was agonizing over this process, you can see in the bottom right hand corner, I don't know if that's getting cropped off from where I am, but the name of this file is still called oathcolorsmaybe.jpg. And it's because I just wasn't sure where it was going to go. But I was looking through some a file on my computer that I just call Random Doodles. And this was some art that I posted a long time ago that was just not for anything. It was just for fun. But I really like how the colors worked, and I just sampled a bunch of colors from this image and made a new color palette. And I needed to make sure I had some of every kind of color and a good theme going. So I made this, and this is the color palette that I've been using to color the rest of the Oath artwork. And I was so happy with how this turned out. Yes, the correct name, the correct way to name files. Yeah, so this is how this turned out. And then I went back through some of the art that I had already done in that similar style, and I recolored it with the new color palette, a new kind of design aesthetic in mind. And I just felt so much better about it. felt so much better about it. And this is some of the art that that Cole, when he was talking to me about it, and with some of the character design stuff, he said it kind of feels like it has a Jim Henson feel to it. Like, I'll take it. I admire the heck out of the Muppets and the character design that happens there, and that's what I'd like to do. So I'm not going for Dark Tower specifically, or not well, not going for Dark Tower 2, but Dark Crystal, to make an homage to that. But I'm okay with the Jim Henson uh, illusion there. So here's some of that art, and then here's the halberdiers. Here is magician script. And the halberdiers, the background that they are on is some of the background assets from Vast and Mysterious Manor, and the magician script is the background on that card is the same, some of the background ink that I used for a card called Stand and Deliver. If you're a Root fan, you might recognize those rocks. So there's those. Here's some other cards, some other art that I had done previously and was just taking back to recolor. So one of the other things to take in mind for Oath is that the cards are small. I don't know if you've seen them in any of the live play videos, but they're bridge size. They're not full card size, and we needed them to be that way because of how they lay out on the map, on the mat. And because of that, I'm drawing pretty small, but then it's getting blown up a little bit. And the reason I like that is because then you can see paper texture, and you can see like ink bleed. And I think a lot of that stuff is really visceral. Like you can feel it a little bit, even if you're just seeing it with your eyes. It's a feeling, and it's a good quality for board games to have, in my opinion. So especially on the little cards, a lot of these are pretty small drawings that are being blown up a little bit. Yeah, somebody asked about Easter eggs. There you have it. If you look on this card on the right, the background for that is from, I think, Vast the Fearsome Foes expansion. That's one of the Ghoul cards backgrounds. But I was messing around with different styles, and so rather than drawing a whole bunch of things, I was just using some background textures to get a feel for things, and there you go. Here's the wrestlers. Here's the traveling doctor, reincorporated in the new colorway and style. And what this also allowed me to do is it let me took some of the ink work that I had done in the in-between, in the Middle Ages style, and redraw it with the new aesthetic in mind. So this is Horse Archers from before, which isn't a bad drawing, but like just Horse Archers on the right feels more like its own thing. Feels more oathy. Let's see. Then we get to character art. So if you're just tuning in, we discussed it a tiny bit before, but I really wanted, even though most of who you're interacting with in Oath are humans, I really wanted the characters you play to be a little weird, a little different. And Cole and I discussed this at length, where it's like, we want the exiles and the emperor or the chancellor to be outsiders, to be strange. And so they all have something kind of strange about them. So the white player on the far left was sort of the like clearly magical, and the fox player, the wolf player, it's like clearly animal, and then like the blue and the black players just a little bit mysterious, not quite human, and then the yellow player has 4 arms. It's just sort of like a bug or something. So they're all by default in this position of like not quite fitting in, which could be seen as a bad thing, hence being an exile at the beginning of the game. But this is also an opportunity. Being set apart from everybody is actually a good thing in Oath, where you're trying to take over, apparently, you know, and make a name for yourself, and being different is a good default starting position for that. So this is still when I was doing the washes, so these are just one color. One of the considerations that I got to make daily was let's see, like color palettes and making sure they're colorblind friendly. So because Oath has 6 suits and at this time 5 players, it was hard to come up with a color palette that worked for that. So we're utilizing black and white and doing that. Let's see. Imaginary human ethnic groups. What happened to the big nose black character? I liked him. You know, I liked him too. I had a character for the Black Pawn originally that looked a little bit different. And if you, I haven't deleted any of those posts or anything. They're on Twitter or on Facebook, and it had a character that had a wide brimmed hat and a long nose, and he was you know, inspired by by a variety of things. But I had a couple people mention to me when I posted some of the character art that it looked like an uncomfortable cross section of a few stereotypes of like Jewish caricature, and I was like, oh no, like that's not what I'm going for at all. And the last thing I would want is for someone to feel like they weren't welcome to play our game. So I redesigned the character. Still went for the same kind of feeling, but just changed it so it wouldn't be in any way misconstrued as being an affront to an ethnic group or a religious group or anything like that. So yeah, it makes it. You know, I want to listen to the people, and I think people who are like, no, don't change it, don't, you know, do what you want. They're being overly sensitive, and it's like it's important to listen to what people are sensitive to and care about. Like you can, I don't know, being considerate is an important part of you know, wanting to be part of a board game community. I think, you know, when we do conventions and stuff and we play board games, I love doing that, but board games are such a like a familiar, I hesitate to use the word intimate, but like it's a space where I want to do that with friends and with people that I like and care about. And I think anytime you're doing anything to the board game space to make people feel like they're not welcome, you're kind of ruining it. Like, and you know, I almost understand this you know, like this drive people have to, you know, keep something special by making it just for them. But that's a hard way to live your life. It's a sad way to live your life, especially for something like board games where it can bring people together instead of driving them apart. Let's see. Yeah, I love how the Fox character was among the very first sketches. Yep, very much is. Yeah, I like that you can't tell the gender of the exiles too. Yes, also important. Any of them could be anything. Say he, she, they, them about any of them. Let's see. What have you been playing lately outside leader stuff? I will get to that question at the end for sure. You can see, I don't know if you can see, all my board games are down here in my basement office with me now, and that's what I'm playing right now. So every character needed to have both an exile side and a citizen side. So they got kind of like the scrubby version and the dressed up version. So this is the white player pawn. This is the red one. And I think this art actually might be switched in a lot of the imagery right now, that we have the exile and the citizen mixed up on these, but that'll be fixed later too. And then here's blue pawn. And you can see how we were talking about earlier, I'm not doing as much white outlining like I did with root. There's still a little bit of it, but I'm trying to do more colored outlining to give it kind of its own feel. And then here's yellow. Yellow is usually the color that I play when I play board games because it's easy for me to remember. Unfortunately, I learned that coal does the same thing. So when we play board games, only one of us gets to be yellow. And then here's the new black one. There you go. And then here's kind of all of them together, what that looks like. Nobody ever chooses yellow. I do, and Cole does. Cloud Person is my favorite. I really like Cloud Person too. Let's see. Okay, Chancellor. So during the design, Cole came to me and said, um, we need another, character. We need another player piece. And it's going to be, the Emperor, the Chancellor, the winner from the previous game. And I was like, well, how are we going to do that? Because, like, I tried really hard with all these characters to give them unique silhouettes so they would be easy to make into meeples so you could tell them apart easily. And now you're saying that we need to make one character that could be any of them. And so the approach I did with the Chancellor was to make this kind of big, just kind of overdressed, very Jim Henson, Skeksis, kind of like there's just lots of stuff going on character, and then give them a mask. So the Chancellor could be the blue character, could be the red character, that like there's no, like, you go from being yellow, if that's your favorite color, to playing this character later, and it could still be you, just in a new form, new generation. And yeah, do I have names for them in my head? No, I don't. One of the great things about Root that we also tried to do with Oath is that we didn't do a lot of backstory stuff built in, because we really want to make it as an open book as possible for people to make their own stories. So if we called, for Root we called the raccoon Roger, but that was before we had made some of these decisions. And for Oath, I don't have names for any of them, because it's like if the Chancellor was named Roger, then that tells more story than I want to with the art, and I want people to kind of make it their own, especially for Oath, which is a game that literally you make your own. Like, after playing Oath, one time, it's going to be different than most everybody else's Oath, and after you play Oath 2 times, you'll have a different copy, a different setup than anybody else's game. There's a small probability that you'll have it be the same as anybody else's. Let's see. How do you think about this thematically? For example, the fox pawn wins the game and his next he's a fat purple pawn. Right, he puts on a whole bunch of robes and a mask. Because, like, when you think about it, I had to make a character that could be a red fox guy. It could be a 4-armed yellow guy. It could be the blue guy with one eye. So, like, I couldn't give them any features. Like, even if I give them a height that, like, beyond, like, below a certain degree, it's going to rule out some of the players. Like, oh, well, if you're the tall guy, then you can't be the tall Chancellor. So it just has to be neutral. Like, whatever you are, you become the Chancellor at the end of it. You put on this mantle of power. Do I have the card back art yet? No, I don't. Will I make the art for the metal favor coins? Yes, I will. And the magic resin. We're just talking about recently about how to do that. So I have a couple sketches. Let's see. Here's a Chancellor with all the other ones. There's kind of a full body situation, and you can see how big it is compared to the other ones. And I didn't talk at all about the word mark for Oath. So the actual logo for Oath is the ink, and it's ink that I did with this weird pen. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. It won't show me on the stream for a couple seconds, but this is a dip pen. It's just a hollow tube that is flattened on the side, and just dip pen like that. So I drew / wrote the word Oath like 1,000 times, and then picked the one I like the best, and that's what the logo is. Let's see. Can we see the magic and favor sketches? I mean, yeah, if you want. Let's see what I got here. This actually might be in a different sketchbook now that I think about it, because I knew I took it out of the house, and this one only has 1 page left. So the answer was yes, but now the answer is no. When I'll post it later when I get to that sketchbook. So let's talk. Yes, this is a Dan Barry pen. Thank you. I couldn't think of his name. I was going to find it for later, but Dan Barry, this is his pen that he made, and I bought it and I use it. One of the best things about this pen is doing splatters. So I'll dunk this in just like some lubricated ink, and then because it's a straw, just blow on the end and it splatters on the paper and stuff. So it's cool like that. Is there any content prepared for the journal so far? Not quite yet. Like I said earlier, had a baby last week. All the work that's been done to now has been pre-baby, and now I'm taking some time and focusing on the highest priority things. And the journal is kind of low down on that priority list compared to some other things right now. How do you come up with screen printed meeples? What's the thought process like? The thought process for me for meeples is, first, can you identify them by shape? Because not everybody can tell colors apart as easily as me or just people who don't have color blindness. And so I have an app on my phone that lets me check color blindness. And so that's first consideration is shape. Second is color, that they can be differentiated on different scales. And then character. So like with the root meeples and hopefully with the oath meeples too, it's just like, it's not going to have the detail that a miniature does, but you can still be fond of it. Like you can still like it. You hold up a cat meeple or hold up your oath meeple and be like, this is me, and kind of identify with it in a little way. And so with that, it's going to be, facial expressions or little things to indicate just the slightest amount of character, so people can kind of imprint on it. Not like in a Twilight way, but just like in a I like it kind of way. So now just some box process stuff. I'm totally fond of my otter meeples. Oh, good. Why no green meeple? Because green is a color you cannot use if you want to use red, if you're making your game colorblind friendly. I knew there would be lots of green on the landscape cards, and that meeples will be sitting on those cards a lot. So it didn't make sense to make it from that perspective, and also from a colorblind friendly perspective, because I wanted to use red a whole lot. I kind of decided that early. Some of my first sketches you can see back when we were calling the game Saga, and then also Warg, was that there were red meeples, and I wanted to use it, and I knew the green was not in there. So will any art prints from the games ever be for sale? So that's, I'll show you this real quick while I'm showing the board game stuff. So I draw small and I draw in a sketchbook, and I am scanning and making it larger so you can see paper texture and ink bleed. And because of that, I don't really have any prints I can sell because they're just in a sketchbook. So I'll give you an example, maybe. So people might have a favorite card from Oath. People might have a favorite card from Oath, and they're like, "Oh, I want the card art for the specialist." Well, it's like this is that. Like the original art is, I drew 2 of them on the same page, and then underneath it is the icons for Fort, a different game that we're also making. So like buying the original art of this would be like less than a 3x5 card worth of cutout paper, and on like just sketchbook paper. It's not like archival watercolor paper or anything. So I could sell like prints of things of it, or like Leader Games could make an art book eventually, and that's what I'd like to do. But no original prints, because that would be a little bit weird to do that. What was your aha moment in your life when you realized, I can do this art thing for a living, and how often do you need to keep reminding yourself of that fact? I've always drawn since I was little, since I was in kindergarten and before. I draw Garfield from memory. I always loved drawing. I wanted to be an artist when I grew up. I went on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for 2 years, from 2006 to 2008, and didn't draw much while I was doing that because I was just busy, and then got home, got back to Utah, and was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I can make it as an artist as a career. And I went to school for English literature, and I hated it. I wasn't very good at it. I mean, I liked it. I just wasn't good at the classes. And I I took some non-elective graphic design classes, and I had a professor be like, "You could do this, you know, you could do graphic design." So I switched majors. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Visual Communication. My emphasis was on illustration, but I also learned graphic design stuff. And then I worked a lot of graphic design jobs before I got Illustrator full-time, and that's what I do for Leader Games. And I don't have to remind myself of it much because I'll get Slack notifications if I forget. People will tell me that I need to do the art if I stop doing it. Let's see. Oath and Root Meeples beat every single miniature in a board game I've seen. Thank you, that's so nice. How do I color the outlines? Are they on the same layer, or have I drawn them separately? They're on a separate layer. So when I do Photoshop, my process is make the lines their own layer, color underneath, and then color the lines on top, just using color mask stuff on top if I want to. Let's see. Why was the name changed from Saga to Oath? That's a complicated question. Basically, we wanted it to be evocative. We didn't want it to get confused with other properties, and Oath is where we landed because we felt like it was the best overlap of those things. We knew it wasn't going to get confused with anything else of a similar name, and it's evocative of what you're doing in the game. That you're making an oath in the game. And also it fits the one-syllable, four-letter motif that we've done with Vast and with Root and with Fort. So Oath works with that. Let's see. If you had to promote a card to be another Exile, what card would it be? What card art? I don't know. I do another Wizard or something probably. Let's see. Did I miss any? Was there ever a consideration of wooden screen-printed meeples for Vast rather than miniatures? I didn't know that was something that you could do before we did Root. So Vast came first. We did meeples for that. And then we did Root and did screen-printed meeples. And then we did Vast's Mysterious Manor, and those come with miniatures in the box and are fantastic. And we only did meeples for that separately. And the meeples for that, I wanted to match Crystal Caverns, because those are games that you can use together. So those are not screen printed. So there was never a discussion to do that because we just needed to keep it consistent. What's my favorite Root faction to play? I like them all a lot. But I play the birds most often when I'm teaching because it's hard for me and I like birds. And I play the cats because they're funny to play as, the most parental role. Let's see. Do you think you'll ever branch out to do side projects like Cole has done with Whirligig? Do you think it would be game related? So I did a little bit. I illustrated a card game called Dungeon Mayhem for Wizards of the Coast. But Leader Games keeps me so busy. I really am not going to take on a side project for a game unless it's like really easy and something I really want to do and pays me a lot of money. Unless it's all three of those things, I probably will not take on any game projects. So I'm going to scoot over. So here is the pencil art for the Oath cover. There's a painting that I really like that I could not find a copy of, and I don't know who painted it. So it's not maybe the most useful information, but it's of this family that is praying over their harvest, like their fall harvest, and just showing gratitude for their pumpkins and things. And I really love the composition because they're on what's clearly like a mountainside, and you're looking down on them, and behind them you can see all of the fields and things laid out. But the thing I love most about this painting is that you get a huge sense for like the scale of what you're looking at, but there's no sky in the picture. And so I wanted to create that same kind of feeling with the Oath cover, where you're on a ridge or you're on a mountain and you're looking down into what is essentially the world, but it's a huge valley. And to give some context to kind of the way the map works in Oath. And one of the other big themes that I wanted to emphasize a lot was that in Oath you're building your empire on top of somebody else's empire. And that meant I wanted, castles coming out of ruins, towers being built on top of other castles, and flags and being planted in rocks, and trees sprouting out of structures and on top of old building, because in Oath, what you're doing essentially is you're making your mark on the world, but everything you're doing is on top of somebody else's world that they've built. So with that in mind, and there's the word mark, and then that came with some playing around with colors and some of the watercolor washes to see kind of feel I wanted to go for, and then just inking. So you can see from the ink that you got, you know, little houses that look like kind of like new development. Maybe you have old towers that are falling apart. You have castles built on top of other castles. And this is cropped a little bit funny, but the I also included all of the exiles and the chancellors in this art. So when you get the cover up close, you can see that kind of like a Where's Waldo, that all of them are in there. Easter eggs. Let's see, I got a question. How did you manage time when working back and forth on Fort and Oath? I don't know. I don't know, man. It was hard. They're both big projects, so it was just about time management and about my brave coworkers pinging me and reminding me when things were done and needed to be done. Let's see. Let's see. How did Patrick and Cole know that they could squeeze so much independent art out of you for this project? Because they pay me to. I work for Patrick. He's my boss, so if he says do this and I say yes, thank you for the money. Great bird photos lately, thank you. I can hear them outside right now. My hedge out here is full of sparrows this very instant. I don't know if you can hear them, but I certainly can. I think I caught the end of you explaining why the other characters don't have a Chancellor version, but somehow showing each PC as a Chancellor seemed to make it a lot of sense. Why not? Sorry if you already explained this. Oh, it's okay. Basically, I just needed the Chancellor to be big enough and masked and featureless enough that any of the exiles could be the Chancellor. And that's all it was. So I tried to make it mysterious and kind of creepy, and that's what I went. That's what I went to. Where is the jumping pig? The jumping pig is in the bottom right of this image, and he's just barely cropped by this weird crop here. And then here is the kind of me coloring it in, doing color blocking, and then the bottom left, you can see me coming up with kind of a color scheme for the board that would still be cohesive with all the interior and card art, but would look kind of like its own thing. I'm always tempted just to make everything purple. I worked, while I was at school at Weber State University, I worked for the Alumni Association, and I grew a serious aversion to purple because it was one of the school colors and I had to make everything purple. And for a while I hated purple, but now I subconsciously make everything purple. Vast is purple, Root Underworld is purple, and so I was like, I'm not going to make Oath purple. But it's a little purple in the middle there, and just wanted to give it kind of that atmosphere of like, here's the foreground, here's the background, and so yeah, here's the box art, all told. There's the pig in the right hand corner. This is while I was still working on some of the details, but I had some of the overarching stuff done. Let's see, Weber State, are you a Damian Lillard fan? Yes, I actually, because I worked for the Alumni Association and for the bookstore, I designed the shirts that they wore at the draft party when Damian Lillard got drafted to the Trailblazers. So if you've seen the shirt where Damian Lillard is just running with the ball, I drew that shirt. Fun facts about Kyle. Will I be at Origins Game Fair? Yes, I probably will. It's the convention that's on Father's Day every year, and I hate that about it, but I'll probably be at Origins. If I wanted to print the cover art and hang it in my living room, can I have a high-res file, please? I am not going to post a high-res file of this box art right now. I'm sorry. We still need to make the game and still print it. And I don't want to be putting a whole bunch of assets for people to make their own yet, because we need to sell it so I can have a job. Let's see. Let's keep going. And then there is the box art with my name and Cole's name and the subtitle. and the word mark that I made. You can see statues toppled over, and the background stuff gets covered up, but then and then I think kind of the last stuff I've been able to work on for Oath is just the board art. When we posted it on Kickstarter, it was just kind of a neutral texture that Cole made with some of the art assets. We had lots of people saying, why is the board boring? I was like, it clearly says that it's a work in progress. I'm going to have a baby in 2 days, please. And people were like, why is the board not finished? And I was like, please, just, it's almost done. I'll do it. And then more and more board game forum, like board game geek forum. Why is the board tan? And I was like, oh, so no joke. Monday, last Monday, I was like, I'm going to get this to a point where we can put it on the site. It doesn't have to be finished, but I want the Kickstarter to have some color on it so people stop asking if the board is finished, because it's hurting my heart. So here's the board art. And you can see, if you've been through the whole stream, where some of the art from back when we were calling it Saga works its way into kind of the aesthetic for this. So here's kind of the cradle. Here's the provinces. And here's the hinterlands. And all of these will be a little bit more fleshed out. This is just so people would stop being sad at me on Kickstarter. But so literally Monday I finished this and we got it posted, and then Tuesday I had a new son enter the world. So that's the story of the Oath board. Let's see, I'm just about, no, I was part of the group complaining about the board. I'm very sorry. It's okay. It was just like, it was just driving me crazy, because it's like, oh man, I like Root won awards for art, and I don't say that to brag, but more just like people were thinking that I was done with the Oath board, and I was like, have some faith, have some faith in me that I'm not just gonna let it be a tan board. Let's see. All I heard is I want more purple on the board. There probably will be more purple and more orange on the board. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, this is the animated game cover from the video that Carol so nicely made. And I thought I would just leave it on this and do any questions that are left in the chat, and then kind of wrap this up. So the board is your greatest accomplishment for just about 24 hours. Not even that. Not even 24 hours. So this was like a midnight run finishing situation, and then baby was born the next day before midnight. So let's see, can you teach me how to make my beard look as majestic as yours? Sure. So shaving for contour, you got to shave your cheeks and your neck so people can tell where your beard begins and ends. And then use just like a dime's amount of beard oil to keep your face moisturized so you don't get beard drift. And then if you're feeling extra fancy, you can use whatever hair product you're using or some beard balm to shape your beard and mustache however you would like. I don't know. Beard questions are funny. Everybody's different. Let's see. Will you be at PAX East? I'd love to get my copy of Root signed. I will not be at PAX East. I've been every year for a while now, and it's a great convention to go to, but new baby. I will not be at PAX East this time. But I will be back again. Can you comment on space skeletons? Yeah, we have some projects in the works that are going to be coming after Oath and after Fort gets published. And I'm excited about them, and it probably doesn't make sense to promote much about them now, lest I take away from what we're doing this instant, but you should be excited for future projects that Patrick is designing and that Cole is working on with him and the whole team. We have such a good team at Leader Games, and I cannot say enough about how grateful I am to work with such cool people who care about what they're doing. Let's see. Everything looks good. Can't wait to see it finished and you to play it. Thank you. 100% faith. Thank you. What will be on the metal coins? It's a good question. So in my mind, whenever I think about what money is, I always think about trading chickens for things, like bartering. And it's like, here's a chicken, I'll give you a chicken, and then you give me tools, and I'll give you a chicken and you give me grain. And it's just like this ideal of a person with a chicken farm who just needs other things and knows that not everybody wants chickens, and so he invents money. And so I don't know. I have an idea about wanting to include some kind of chicken on the coin. I don't know if that'll make it into the end product, or if my coworkers who are listening to this right now are mortified about the oath chicken coin that I'm proposing. Um, let's see. As everyone is asking conventions, will you cross the Great River for Essenspiel? I don't even have a passport right now. I have some health conditions that make traveling kind of difficult, and across the ocean might be hard. So probably not eminently, but maybe one day go to Essen. That would be fun. What animal would you want to add as a faction in Root? I'd love to see some toads and frogs. I think that would be fun too. So Root's art was based on a game we were working on and will continue to work on called Path. That was Patrick's design. And Path's art is where a lot of the Root stuff got started. And back when it was like, it was all, behind the curtain, deep dive stuff. But I drew a bunch of art for anthropomorphic creatures, but only one of them was a mammal, and it was a cat. And then the rest were lizards, and that became Lizard Cult. There were also beetles, and there were frogs, and there was a spider. So there were lots of things that didn't end up in Oath, but I would like to do a frog or a toad eventually too. More skeletons, awesome. Any personal lore interpretations you'd quickly share on the history and realm or exile races in Oath? My first thing is just that the exiles are not races. They're just odd people. They're just charismatic oddities. So like, if you're the Cyclops guy, you're the only Cyclops guy. And all your war bands are just dudes and ladies and everything in between. So that there's not really any races that way. And then, like I said earlier, monsters and things will mostly be more like animals and less like, a race of people. Let's see. What is magic going to look like? I heard it will be stackable. Yes, it will be stackable. Magic will probably take the form of some kind of resin, like caricaturized book. Think of it in that way, because the magic and Oath is more representative of like secret knowledge. So it'll be kind of like a book. You've definitely been recognized for having a signature style. Do you feel like that hinders you in future projects? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. There's a great letterer. She does like really great just lettering work for books and publications named Jessica Hish, and she came and spoke when I was in college, and she talked to us briefly about just specializing. She was like, there are some people who make their whole career just being really good at drawing chocolate. And like when you have a chocolate that you need illustrated, you go to this specific guy who only draws chocolate, and he does it on like his computer that he'll never update because he's worried that the software will ruin his specific process, and he only draws chocolate. And like, it pays his bills, and there's a lot to be said about trying to diversify and like be good at a lot of things, but like it's okay to be kind of good at one or two things too, and just branch out a little bit at a time and do things that you care about, and that'll show in your work. Let's see. Boy, now the chat's going crazy. I vote for chicken money. Is favor the same as coin? No, not really. So that's why I'm on the fence about doing that. Are there any licenses you'd like to work with someday? It'd be fun to work with certain constraints while still using your style, or do you like the broader freedom of new property? I think it depends, because especially with board games, I don't know that like anybody is going to come to Leader Games and say, will you draw a Firefly game in the style of, like, will Kyle Farron draw it? Like, they'll want to use their own photography and art assets and stuff. They're not going to use my stuff. So that's kind of hard to say. I would love to do a sci-fi game. I'd love to do a Western game. There are lots of things like that could be fun, but might be later on down the line might be a little bit complicated. Let's see. Someone said bats. Yeah, there's at least one bat character for Root that is going in the Root RPG that Magpie Games is publishing. And so I've literally have already drawn a Root bat. It exists. Also Frog, actually, too. Favorite game mechanic? I like games that are funny and like in that way. So like Galaxy Trucker is a very funny game, and Root can be very funny. Like when you do things that like are narratively like, what are you doing, and just like make people laugh. So I think games that can surprise you with what you can do with the mechanics. That's not like a specific game mechanic, but just like games that force you to think differently about the people you're sitting around the table with. I really like that. What style would you want for the next game you're making? Sci-fi, Norse again? Please be Norse. We've done a lot of a lot of fantasy games, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Sometimes it's just the best fit. Like Oath, a fantasy setting was the best fit, but we'll see. How many cards have I done? Oh, I don't know. Don't make me work. I don't want to look. Some. I haven't done nearly the level I need to have the game finished, but I do have enough time to finish the game. Let that be my answer. I like that you said Firefly. Great taste. Oh no, don't ask me my actual opinions on Firefly. I put Firefly in the same camp with Doctor Who as being like, sure, people like that. Wrapping around, what board games have you been enjoying playing recently? Oh, okay. I said I would answer this before. So, I really like Galaxy Trucker. I really like Zendo is one of my favorite games to play with a big group of people. It's very thinky. I play a lot of Root, actually, you know, and that sounds like I'm just making it up, but people who know me know that I worked on this game, and they're like, I want to play it, so I do. I teach a lot of people how to play Root. I like Zombicide. I play that with my kids. I have a lot of Zombicide, probably too much Zombicide at this point. I like a lot of dexterity games. My kids play Animal Upon Animal a lot. I do junk art with family and friends. I don't know. Is that enough of an answer? And then I play a lot of role-playing games. It's been a couple weeks just because new family developments, but I played Dungeons and Dragons with my buddies weekly or bi-weekly. So, and I get a lot of fun out of that. So, company Slack is complimenting my beard tutorial. What class am I? So for a long time I played a half-orc barbarian named Krusk. And currently I'm playing a human fighter because I just wanted to play a vanilla character. Let's see. I'll give it just another minute here to get any questions. And we'll be done. Oh, let's see. Did I miss some? For Magic, instead of stackable, have you considered standing pieces like the armies in Road and Pax Premier? So, they will be similar materials. They will be resin like the pieces in Pax Premier, if you're familiar with those. Cole's other game. Think like that, but they will be stackable. They won't be that big. But let's see. Thanks, Kyle. Good luck on the card art. Thank you. Thank you, random citizen. Let's see. Will you put oath-related products in your shop? Maybe. That's a down the line thing. A lot of the stuff that's in my like personal Threadless shop was stuff I drew before they became Leader Games products, and that's kind of I don't want to mix up my personal store stuff and work stuff too much. Do you like making goofy D&D characters with goofy stats? I made a dance wizard that has charisma as his highest stat, even though it sucks for him. Yeah, one of my favorite D&D characters ever was a gnome with high intelligence that no other good stats. And he was a wizard, and he rode in a backpack for another character who basically just carried him. And that's so it was two people playing ostensibly one character, and that was very fun. Choose a favorite. Whose games do you like drawing more, Cole or Patrick? You must choose. No easy way out. I think I've drawn more characters for Cole so far, but Patrick, I guess, because like Patrick is why I have a job. Patrick is the reason I can support my family and live in a house. And I have a special place for the vast goblins and all the dungeon crawly stuff for the vast games. So that, and like my name has become associated with Root so strongly that I can hardly draw an animal anymore without people being like, "Is this for Root?" I'm like, no, I just wanted to draw a bird today, and like, for Root, right? Like, no, it's just a bird. So, no, nothing against Cole in that capacity, but like, I don't want to only do Root forever. I like Root, but I don't want to only do Root forever. Let's see. Cole said pick Patrick. I did. Let's see. Well, I think we're almost done. I need to cut this off at some point so I can get my girls from school and things. But thank you everybody for the stream, and hopefully this worked. It's my first time doing it this way, and thanks for everybody at work, especially Gates, for like making this possible, like showing me how the program works, and Twitch and Facebook and everything. So appreciations. Thank you everybody. Yeah, and I'll watch this later and probably critique the heck out of how many times I say or touch my face, but hopefully it wasn't too upsetting for you to watch. Thanks. Bye.